the k8gb stuff. I share my screen. Maybe quickly before we jump into k8gb Lite, I think that's a larger topic, right? So I will leave most of the time for today's meeting for you, Michal, to talk about super quick on like a follow-up actions, right, from our last one. So we got this recommendation from CLO Monitor and to create a scorecard badge, and it appears that it's not just a badge, it's actually new actions that they're recommending like transitively, right? So like it's a core scorecard. I saw that they connected because the core scorecard definitely was and still used as a core for CLO Monitor itself, but apparently they want some like, you know, motivate the projects now to do an additional scorecard based security check or something. What I did today, yeah, I went through the recommendation here, whatever, like, you know, whatever they recommend here, like create this kind of UI clicky style PR, and I send the PR. So if somebody can approve, we can merge it and see how it behaves. Basically, it doesn't allow testing upfront, right? Because most of the thing like kind of master branch, and we can iterate in it and see if it's useful or not. And it's supposed to provide some feedback in a security tab as well. So might be useful in general. So
it's the thing that gives you the score, right? In percent.
Yeah. It's a scorecard, security scorecard. So we'll see. It's probably useful for like a yet another project evaluation automation. So let's see. Next one is Azure support. I think Nuno was trying to contact Microsoft dudes, but I'm not aware of any feedback. And yeah, we'll see either we respond to next time, or I will can try to accelerate the PR, like, you know, as we discussed before, just like a carry on cherry pick the original author commits and build up on top. So create a PR, but we both respecting the original contributor, meanwhile not blocking the overall feature. So, and yeah, a lot of pipelines are failing for different reasons. So overall, it looks not nice, like whole stuff is red. So if you by any chance will ever have time, or, you know, like, or you're bored, you always have some material to investigate, right? So we have a going kind of false positive here, pretty well-known issue, right? Another one, I think, which one was that? Different kind of failure. A terror test, false negative, which is failing with Go releaser. And I think that's probably for the most frequent ones I see nowadays. So here you remember our pain during release, and apparently it is like, you know, breaking the pipes from time to time. Yeah, so so something worth the investigation as well. I will try to also like attack it, but it appears to be like really non-deterministic, right? So that's part of the problem, and we definitely have a separate issue on it. But just a general thing to highlight. It's overall, like, you know, super inconvenient that almost every PR is still failing, even after like I gated it like a parallel heavy runs. It's still a lot of false positives. So we need to keep this in mind, and yeah, as a most closest enhancement for project health in general. And k8gb Lite, Michal, page is yours. You want to share, by the way? Are you on mute?
Sorry, just wait a second. I'm just quitting my email conversation and things. k8gb.
So I'll stop sharing in case you want to demonstrate something.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, let me share my screen. Good. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. So k8gb Lite. Basically, k8gb Lite currently exists in a separate repository. It was created as the very new project based on the existing k8gb, and it contains a couple of advantages and some breakaways which we have in the k8gb. It just removes them. Let me just check if I have some presentation for that. This one, I guess. Yeah. So sometimes I need to do some step back to make one step forward. And basically, as I thought, it is in the very new, like a k8gb Lite project. But here I'm trying to explain a couple of differentiators. If the motivation for that was when we create like a new resource or create GSLB, there are two different source of truth. We are keeping the information about the k8gb within the ingress as well as GSLB. We have some vouchers within the k8gb, and when we modify or add ingress or GSLB, it runs some code, and this code is running a reconciliation loop, and it changes the status of GSLB. But it very differs currently if you create GSLB from the ingress or you create GSLB from the GSLB and then ingress is created. But it's the drawback of that is that those things are quite often fight each other. So it is running one reconciliation after the one by one. You know, one is changing state, creating GSLB, which runs against reconciliation loop. Then it sets something. So again, it runs reconciliation loop. I try to write what's going on when I'm creating the GSLB from ingress, and it just runs setup, GSLB, reconciliation, setup again, GSLB, reconciliation, then it fails to error, then it runs setup again, and goes on. And there are like many cycles, some of them are error rows. So the problem is that it could report some issues, it could report some alerts when you change ingress or GSLB. There are the code repetitions, and yeah, there are many cycles until resources have been changed. And some use cases we don't have implemented yet. There are corner cases. For instance, there is some process which, let's say you have ingress and other operator change the ingress, so it runs reconciliation on k8gb side. Maybe this reconciliation removes the annotation of another operator, and this another operator is killed or it reconciles again, so they start to fight each other. and basically it can cause a lot of problems. So this was main motivation. So the main change in the k8gb Lite is removing GSLB CRD. We have only one single source of truth, which is the ingress. I'm simplifying the whole life cycle at all and reducing number of loops when you change something within that ingress. It is now consistent and predictable. So if you change something, you see that ingress loop just, the reconciliation loop just going once, for instance. So we also, as the side effects, we are reducing the number of reported errors, and we are reducing number of reconciliation cycles. So we are reducing also number of the HDNS hits. Fix ingress versioning issues. Yeah, we have also the problems with the GSLB is that if someone installed the GSLB on the old clusters, it is with the old version of k8gb, there is like a old ingress behind the GSLB, and we need, if you want to reinstall k8gb, you need to reinstall the CRD as well, which means that you need to you must migrate your GSLBs to the new version. But because we removed GSLB at all, this problem doesn't exist. And it's not implemented, but it is ready to allow new providers, except ingress, it is like gateway API, it could be service, basically it could be any Kubernetes resource. You just need to write a provider for that, read whatever information you want, and you work with on the top of that.
Sorry if I can ask inline question. So my exact concern, especially after we got a feedback from our talk together with Nuno. So people were definitely interested, like in our other use cases, like a service, and I'm like potentially putting more logic into k8gb, right? Extending it. So concerning like if we get rid of GSLB CRD, where to put that logic, where to keep like, I don't know, the geotech and stuff. And definitely on a provider stuff, like what that provider actually looks like. Yeah. What is an extension mechanism?
Okay. Let me show you. This is k8gb Lite, and within the k8gb Lite, we have controllers, providers, and now mappers. And basically, what I've got here, there's this mapper go, it should be interface. And this interface has some interface functions, which are like try remove finalizer, get status, equal, etc. And you have, for instance, ingress, which is implementing that mapper, and you just implement these functions, and that's it. Then you need to change the factory, and this factory is reading the objects in Kubernetes, and you have to say if, for instance, if the factory recognize the gateway, it will apply the gateway provider. And
so you already have like a gateway API go, some placeholder for
yeah. There is you can see this one is gateway API mapper, which is also implementing this, but it's just a fake implementation. You know, if you decide that you want to use this gateway API mapper, it will just panic, you know, because it's not implemented yet. So someone just takes a time on it and will implement such things, because For the API gateway, it's not one resource, it's a couple of resources. So you need to iterate through the some like a tree because it has some routes, etc. I don't remember how the gateway looks like exactly, and it must be there implemented.
Interesting. So the mapper is actually like mapping potentially like virtually any Kubernetes object with a k8gb kind of semantics and logic, right? So you can map some fields, like get the retrieve the IPs from there, right? Or like populate some status and vice versa, something like that, right?
And that's something is using this mapper somewhere. There is factory, which is basically not fully done yet, but it's not so difficult. But this factory, if it recognizes whether you annotate gateway or service or whatever, it instantiate the correct mapper. It will instantiate the ingress mapper, or it will instantiate the gateway mapper, or another one. And then in the rest of the code, we use that instance. So we instantiate it on the one place within the factory, and then it is used during the lifetime. You know,
and where we keeping like a k8gb specific status stuff, like I don't know, like failover strategy, for example, and which tag is primary. So this kind of load balancing specific data.
Yes, everything is within the annotations.
Okay, so it's put on top of like as annotations on top of arbitrary object. Okay.
I don't remember. It's k8gb. k8gb. What was the annotation called? Strategy. Yeah, this is how it looks like, for instance, you know, basically status, this is how look the metadata of the ingress in the real, you know. You just set the strategy, and these DNS, TTL seconds, and all of these stuffs we set through the annotations. And there is, wait a second. There is one more, status. And this status, it is, I was thinking whether we really need it. We don't need it. It's just for the user to see the status, you know, by eyes, like a manually. But basically, we don't read it. We just, if the status change, we just write it there and forget. I just didn't want to lose the GSLB status, so I wrote it into the annotation. So this annotation is changed, but it is only for the like user, just for the user.
Yeah, but what will be actually user experience? Is like reading this embedded JSON in the status?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the concern, like that it's already kind of very looks like very service kind of JSON. I mean, it's maybe okay for operators, but I'm not sure, like if, like for example, developers who are running the k8gb will like it, right? Because it's kind of embedded JSON structure within a YAML, and it doesn't look very like appealing, right? Comparing to the standard object status, and just like a quick feedback.
I didn't know where to put it because ingress basically it doesn't have fields like health records.
So maybe just an idea. I need to think about it more, but maybe we actually can keep GSLB object around, but it will be read-only, like a kind of GSLB status object. So it will like encapsulate the current state of the load balancing activity. Meanwhile, the actual like a reconciliation and like an input will come from the ingress, gateway, API, service, or like actual network objects, but the meta around the load balancing status will still be populated into a custom GSLB structures that we control, and it will be like a more usable for end users, right? So they can potentially query the status propagate it in a convenient way to IDPs or whatever representation, because like getting this data from within an annotation is already inconvenient, not only like just looking at it, but creating like, let's read this annotation, get the status from underlying structure. Probably already at that stage, some out of the box tooling will fail, right, to get the substatus of status out of the status annotation in this specific example. So instead, like, let's publish to GSLB status, for example, and just get it like more standard Kubernetes canonical way, let's say. So that's high level idea.
We can do, only the problem is that the advantage of this is that we can like leave the CRD, you know. Once I put there like some read-only GSLB, we must come back to CRD. And CRD, it is like additional RBAC
overhead, yeah,
and like overheads, you know, the more complex installation, etc. Once,
that's something for discussion.
Yeah, or I can like make more statuses. I can make like status health, you know, and make or status service health, and make like more annotation fields. You know, it's also like how to solve that. But this is the problem I see in this is the CRD, not the problem with writing to some resource. It's okay to tell it for me. So yeah, key differentiate. So these are like key differentiators. It was this removing GSLB, simplifying cycles, and basically these were the things which I did it for. Comes it because the implementation changed so much. I did like a second level of key differentiators. They are not so important, but they are still there. Finalizers, they are applied and exist only for the info blocks now, because for the external DNS, we don't need to handle with the finalizers, which basically simplifies like k8gb maintenance on the clusters. Because if you don't have finalizers, you know, you need to take care of removing. If something happens, you need to remove the object. For instance, you want to delete it or delete namespace, and you have some blockers with the finalizers. And usually, the Kubernetes resources, they don't have. Basically, there are not so many operators which needs to have finalizers. We must have it, but only for the info blocks. So we inject it only for the info blocks there.
That's because we have like a direct calls to info blocks.
Yeah, exactly. We have to close connection. We have to close connection and doing such things, you know.
Right.
But for the external DNS, it's not necessary. TerraTests, they had changed massively. I mean, seriously, massively. If I go to TerraTests, actually, these were, I did some changes. I did some refactoring like 3 weeks ago. And they really failed. They sometimes racing, not so often as the k8gb, but sometimes they are racing. And if I found the issue, I will fix that. But it happens that they could race. They take more time than before. But I explain you why. The first thing is that I'm running the TerraTest in parallel in the first round. And within those TerraTests, I'm running particular particle scenarios. Usually, I'm running them for the multiple clusters, for instance, for the 3 clusters, not only for the two of them, but usually I'm testing on the 3 clusters. And what I'm doing, I'm testing much more scenarios. The tests I'm doing are like, for instance, G clusters, blank. I create like 3 new clusters, then running the digging. What has changed? I'm also running the wget, which we didn't. We just did manually. So there are also those 2 parts that I'm testing: wget and digging. For instance, I'm doing the 3 things. I'm killing the namespace. Sometimes I'm stopping the application. Also, I'm killing a whole cluster. So I'm testing for such scenarios, which is like a much wider, here I'm spending back the secondary cluster.
So these tests are much more dynamic than we have for k8gb, right?
Yeah, it's not just I'm
cool.
changing the healthy status, but I'm really killing the application, killing the namespace, killing the cluster, and doing it against like 3 clusters. So this one is first part.
That looks like a nice coverage. Really
yeah. This is like a first part, and this one is second part. I'm running still the same test, but I'm running it against multiple versions of Kubernetes. So it is, the lowest was 120, and the highest, I didn't change it like sometime, but it would be like the latest.
No, it looks like already enterprise ready test, right? For covering all Kubernetes versions and stuff.
Yeah,
that's a great job.
Yeah. I needed to do for work I did later, because I had to do something on the like very historical clusters, and I had to be ensured that things are running.
As a result of this test, we can finally provide a real, not a vague support matrix, right? So we deterministically know that k8gb runs there on these versions and that versions, not just something Kubernetes conforming.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Exactly. So this is like a second main differentiator. UDP TCP provider. Yeah, it is something which is like not implemented yet fully, but this is something I don't know at the moment, but I remember we had some things that we had to work with the TCP locally, but outside we were working like in the UDP. I think I did this thing configurable, but
it's about port DNS exposure.
Yeah, I think so. TCP. I think I cannot tell more about it. This is something I'm not really 100% sure if this is like a fully done. Well, I can return back to it later or maybe on the next meeting, but
cool.
So I wrote the task which the thing is killing. Basically, you can find it on the within the repo k8gb. you should find it also here. There are the changes. So there are things that I had changed. If I go one by one, the main one are so deprecating GSLB CRD, unit tests racing. Yeah, the k8gb now we have a unit test racing. It's also removed. Add annotation containing weights for the ingress. GSLB is not updated when ingress is changed and vice versa. I did refactoring in the deb resolver. I simplified it a lot. We have some reconciliation errors. Yeah, they are the tasks which are or issues.
It's for completing.
Reconciliation error. Implementing load balancing strategy. Okay, so this one is merged to k8gb, but we have it as well in the k8gb Lite. It's also tested, etc. With the Terra test. Cannot drop ingress when create GSLB. Yeah, it sometimes happens then when you create from GSLB and the remove ingress, it will automatically recreate your ingress back. You know, because as I told, there are differences if you create from GSLB or you create from the ingress. Ingress V1 beta, I think it is also done. Large number of reconciliation cycles, it is also done. I was talking about it at the beginning. Install finalizers only for the info blocks. Kubernetes version metrics, you've seen that. Splitting makefile, yeah, there is, because we have a really large makefile. I did a very simple one, but
I can't believe my eyes, to be honest. It's too much optimization after our enormous file.
Yeah, but there is a folder called make, and basically the main idea was that
you
there
made
is
about make libraries.
Yeah, make library, and you can see it's it is very different. Some things are changed, some are very different. The problem is that currently I have a problem with our company proxy. Each of us knows that, and this proxy is basically blocking everything. I mean, you cannot do the things like Docker build something, because if you build within the Docker, the proxy basically stops that. So
is it all about SSL interception, right? So
yeah, it's exactly, and basically we did many like the hacks which are bypassing that, but I think we are on the verge of the limits what we can do. So I cannot work with the proxy settings here. So it also contains, I wanted to write, I didn't finish this, but there is the mechanism that you can, in the make files, you can overwrite the stuffs. So
that looks like an OpenSSL dark magic.
Yeah,
I get what you're doing there.
So, but the point is, if you create a custom make file, you can override the things here, and it's just not well described. But I'm working on this task, and there will be the README file telling you how you can override the stuff. So you are doing something in your company, and you need to customize your build process. So yeah. Optimizing makefile and random round robin for DNS. Yeah, it's done there as well. Yeah, there is some like the design breaks, but they are nothing like a super large. Just mention them here. And this is like a design break, like in the code. That something is like a bit hard coded or etc. So this is like a k8gb Lite.
Man, that is very, very impressive work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And how we migrate?
That's the prop bit, because it doesn't have a couple of things. It doesn't have, basically we have to revisit CI/CD pipelines. It doesn't have, you just mentioned it on the beginning, it's builder, you know, and these stuffs, you know, that needs to be set. We have in the k8gb, I think it's kbuilder, or I just forgot the name. I'll get it in my tongue, but forget it.
Which one?
The builder we use for the building the k8gb.
Well, its operator is the K, but kbuilder is an engine. Yeah. Transitive engine.
No, sorry, it's not builder. It's Go Researcher.
You mean
Go
like a
Researcher.
tooling for
Yeah.
building the release? Yeah.
Exactly. So Go Researcher. Second thing is it didn't have a time to do any helming there. There is no helm. We did a lot of work on the helm, so it's not there as well. It's a huge part of work. Documentation changes. Diagrams have to be changed. Documents needs to be rewrite. Revisit, chart, deploy config folders because maybe something is missing, and local playground changes. You know, so this kind of work was not done yet.
Yeah, so that's something that we can put right away on roadmap. And the good question, like how we objectively validate that it is ready for the switch, right? So like, should we build some, apart from the pipelines and all that stuff, high level idea, maybe we should build like some form of reference architectures. Like we already have one for AWS and maybe like a new iteration for k8gb Lite, which is, I assume like there will be no k8gb Lite, we will just evolve the core k8gb, right? So like, so I think we should avoid any form of confusion and kind of forking stuff. So create a revamp of existing reference architecture, create the Azure one, right? So I assume all the external DNS integrations, they're still staying around, right? So we didn't touch that part. And eventually also GCP. So I would have mentioned that we actually test k8gb heavily with creation of this end-to-end reference setups. And this way we will be able to say and advertise properly and like test it end-to-end. It's above the things that you already mentioned. So something like that.
Yeah,
usually,
or maybe make some hackathon and maybe spend one weekend together and change it. You know.
Yeah, Nuno can sponsor some gathering on Madeira, I believe so, right?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Well, Lisbon is the best I can do, but yeah.
So, dudes, any feedback on k8gb Lite? Highly interested in your thoughts as well. EarJS maintainer Nuna as end user, go shoot. What do you think?
It's pretty impressive. Sorry for coming in late, but the bit I could see, it's pretty impressive because it sets up the roadmap for a lot of things that had to be addressed as, in the next shortly things that, for instance, in our adoption, we had in the roadmap to, for instance, sometime this year, look at the story around gateway and so on, and there's a lot of stuff here that really, in our case, for instance, really helps to make sure that we keep using k8gb and we can align it with all of the stuff that's moving forward next to it. In particular, this detachment from the CRD and all the logic around it has a huge potential, at least from my point of view. So, I mean, it's pretty interesting job. It just needs a bow tie around it now for it to be pushed for companies like us that are currently using CRDs and so on, and changing helms, changing stuff, packaging it differently, and using it.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for feedback.
Thanks.
Jerzy, you were selling.
Well, it's good to see some innovation. Oh, I like the changes. And it's good to simplify the things, right? I don't have strong opinions on k8gb Lite because I haven't played with it, but it makes sense, like conceptually.
Cool. The only thing, like currently, I will not have an answer right now, but how we proceed with a roadmap in terms of like, so we have like a closest functionality like Azure in the main k8gb. So what should we do? We probably should still implement it in the support in a current k8gb, right? And then attack k8gb Lite migration or something like that. So like, I mean, how to orchestrate the both activities, and I mean how to merge them as quickly as possible into single stream. That's something that's worth discussion, but it's not easy. I mean, we will need to somehow approach it in a nice way. By the way, Nuala, you were late a little bit. Do you have any feedback from MS guys on Azure stuff support? So any feedback from Sebastian?
I'm talking with Sebastian, and he gave us some inputs on workload identity support, some things we needed to change in a Helm chart besides the stuff that we had changed previously. So I'm currently working on that to share an updated version with him and get some feedback from him on those updates to see if we can wrap up that story. We have some challenges on the external DNS stuff. One or two things that aren't behaving quite as expected in some cases. Let's see if we need a story around more customization on k8gb's side or not. But let's try not to go there. But if needed, we'll customize the customization.
Got it. Cool. So is it fair to say that you actually, like you currently testing the whole Azure side solution of an around external DNS, right? And in a best case scenario, you'll be able to create the PR with the tested Helm chart and stuff. Cool.
Yeah,
that's amazing news. Yeah. All right. I think it was a great meeting. Thanks a lot for attending, and special thanks for great presentation on k8gb Lite. It's really like looks like I don't know. You hired whole team somewhere in the background, and they're working for half a year. So great job, Michal. Really amazing progress. All right, thank you so much, and hopefully see you in a couple of weeks.
See you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.